Anesthesiologists, what was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under? I was working a morning shift in the interventional suite at the hospital, handling pain procedures that required sedation. It was a fairly routine day, nothing unusual on the schedule, but one patient would make it a shift I'd never forget. His name was Greg, a middle-aged man who had been dealing with chronic back pain for years. He was tall, a bit lanky, and had this nervous energy about him, constantly fidgeting with his hands and asking a million questions about the procedure. He had been through a few rounds of epidurals before, so he was familiar with the general process, but ketamine was on the menu today. He was a little apprehensive, but in a way that was more amusing than concerning. Dr. Reynolds, the attending anesthesiologist, asked me to set up the IV and administer the initial dose. I had done this hundreds of times, but something about Greg's energy made me double-check everything, just to be safe. I slid the IV in smoothly, checked the lines, and gave him the ketamine. Within a few seconds, his usual tension began to melt, and a peculiar twinkle entered his eyes. Everyone's turning into cartoons, he said suddenly, his voice lilting and playful. The room, which had been quiet except for the hum of monitors and the low murmur of nurses prepping equipment, went still for a second. We all looked at each other, trying not to laugh but uncertain whether to be concerned. Cartoons? I asked, crouching slightly so I was at his level. Greg nodded seriously, then pointed at Dr. Reynolds. Yeah, you're a cat now. You have big eyes. And your hair, it's like squiggly lines. Dr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow, a grin threatening to escape, while I scribbled notes but couldn't stop glancing at Greg. He leaned back slightly in the chair, eyes wide, and then continued. Oh no, I'm melting. I froze for a moment. Melting? I prompted gently, unsure where this was going. Yes! Greg's voice was full of wonder and mild horror at the same time. I'm melting into a wall of butter. Look at me. Look. He wiggled slightly in the chair, as if his body was physically softening. The nurses in the room exchanged glances, trying to maintain composure while smothering giggles. I had seen some wild things under ketamine, but nothing quite like this. Usually patients get loopy, might make funny observations or talk nonsense, but Greg had this theatrical flair that made the entire experience feel like watching a surreal short film unfold in real time. Into a wall of butter? Dr. Reynolds asked, now completely unable to hide his amusement. Greg nodded solemnly, then rolled his eyes dramatically as if the transformation was inevitable. Yes, and you're a banana now, he said, pointing at me with perfect seriousness. The room erupted in soft laughter, everyone trying to keep the situation light while continuing to monitor him. Greg's speech became more disjointed but remained vividly imaginative. I see clouds, they're purple and green, and my hands are noodles. Noodles made of fire. He waved his arms around as if conducting an orchestra only he could see. I couldn't help myself. You're doing great, Greg. Just relax, you're safe. He seemed to nod, though the nod was more like a slow, undulating wave. Every now and then, he'd glance around the room, pointing at random people and declaring them penguins or robots, all while claiming he was slowly melting into this sticky, buttery puddle that no one else could see. Dr. Reynolds, trying to maintain professionalism, whispered to me, "This is amazing. He's like a performance artist under ketamine." I couldn't argue. The combination of his creativity, the surreal visuals he described, and his complete commitment to the role made it one of the most memorable things I had witnessed in my career. Eventually, Greg's sedation leveled out. He slumped back slightly, blinking a few times, and then, as if nothing had happened, whispered, "I think I'm solid again." Everyone in the room breathed a quiet sigh of relief, but the smiles didn't fade. We completed the procedure, kept him monitored for a while, and he walked out later that day, blissfully unaware of the spectacle he had created. Even now, years later, whenever I think about the weird things under ketamine file in my mind, Greg and his wall of butter meltdown are always at the top. It's one of those rare moments in medicine where the absurdity of human imagination collides perfectly with a clinical setting, leaving everyone involved shaking their heads and laughing quietly. I sometimes tell new residents about Greg. You'll see strange things, I say, but some patients, they'll melt into butter, and it will be glorious. And it really was.